Hi guys, here we go with our next installment of our OSHA mini lessons. Today we're going to be talking about PPE, or personal protective equipment. It's important to know that PPE is considered your last line of defense, not your first line. If you think of things coming away towards your body and you wear your PPE, it's kind of the last barrier before damaging something pretty important on our bodies. So last line of defense. You also want to know that there are actually other things that an employer is supposed to do first to try to minimize hazards. They're going to look at engineering controls as the primary. If that doesn't work, they'll move to work practice controls. And if that can't be done effectively, then they'll resort to PPE. It's not ideal to have ourselves duded up with every form of PPE out there to do our jobs. We look like the Michelin Man. We wouldn't be able to do our jobs effectively in some cases. And it could actually start to pose a hazard because it could limit movement, vision, all those kinds of things. Excuse me. So a form of an engineering control, again, is the first thing they need to look at. It could be isolating a process, maybe moving it to another building. Maybe they change the process, or can they even get rid of it? Could they substitute something else in place of it? Ventilation, so like an overhead exhaust system, would be a form of an engineering control. Again, if those aren't feasible, then they would move to work practice controls. A work practice control is something that you would do differently in performing your duties or your job. So thinking of ventilation, maybe they can't put something in the ceiling to change the air over in a room, but maybe there's a process that you're doing that only takes a couple of minutes. You set up a fan, or maybe you go outside to do that process, then come back in to finish up. Okay. Washing your hands. We've been hearing that a lot lately. Washing hands is a form of a work practice control. Also, keeping your work area clean. And that was part of the general housekeeping standard we talked about in the intro to OSHA. So that is another good form of work practice controls because it's going to minimize slip, trip hazards, and even potentials with machinery as well, something getting launched or broken or damaged. So going to PPE, we're going to be thinking about the parts of our body that we really need to protect. And the most common ones are the ones I'm going to deal with today. We're talking about our head, eyes, ears for hearing, respiratory, so nose, mouth, anywhere that we can breathe into our body, because a lot of these hazards can not only affect our lungs, but also neurological issues and things that can come from that. And then hands are a big one, our feet, and then legs and torso. Again, it gets pretty in-depth with PPE. So I'm going to start off with safety glasses. You guys have already dealt with this. You've been wearing safety glasses pretty much all year. So remember that any form of PPE, there's a lot of copycats out there. And the only way to know that something is actually PPE and that it will work, that it's going to be safe enough, is it has to have an ANSI rating. ANSI is American National Standards Institute, and they will rate everything by testing it to make sure it lives up to the standards and will in fact protect you. So remember, with safety glasses or anything that's safety eyewear, the ANSI rating is Z87. It could be Z87.1, 0.2, it could be a Z87 plus, but you're looking for the Z87. And if we look at safety glasses, I think you guys will remember that a lot of times it's going to be on the bow here, or it could be on the bridge in between, go this way, in between the glasses. Not usually going to put it on the lenses. But remember, it's worth it to actually look and make sure that they are safety glasses. Because I do have a pair here. Beside the fact that they're kind of ugly, most people would think, oh, okay, ugly means safety, right? These aren't safety glasses. Nowhere does it say Z87. And they are actually made by UVEX, which is a very known company that makes a lot of safety gear. So take the time to look. Otherwise, they're not going to protect you when you need it. Keep in mind as well that whenever you're wearing something for like a face shield or a screen, you still have to wear safety glasses. So I'll show you here. I've got this apparatus here. It's actually an acetate face shield. Has my earmuffs on it, and I use this when I'm doing woodworking, when I'm working in the shop. So running my saws, and I can flip it up. You guys probably also noticed that the screen is kind of dirty. It's very important that before you use safety gear, PPE, you always make sure that it is safe to use, it's not damaged, and that it is clean. So before I use this, I always wipe it down with a cloth first. But if I am wearing a shield or a screen, I still have to wear safety glasses. Face shields only help with, say, nuisance dust or small particles flying at you. They're not rated to stop something at high speed. Okay. Now let's look at hearing protection, since I already brought up those. There's three basic forms of hearing protection. We've got ear muffs, and we have something called canal caps, if I can get them off my table here, and we have earplugs. Okay, these are all rated on decibel levels, so how many decibels that they would protect you from. Starting off with earplugs, they come in many different styles. They're usually either a squishy foam or they could be a silicone. It's important that when you put these in your ears, you put them in properly. So that means lifting up your ear while you insert it into your ear canal. Then when your ear comes back down, it closes onto it. You should hear things sounding muffled, okay? Make sure too when you pull them out that you don't just pop them out. You want to twist them. You can kind of damage your eardrum popping them out. If you're going to wear earmuffs of course go over your ears, but if you're wearing safety glasses or regular glasses, where they come in by the foam can compromise their level of protection. So it's okay to wear earplugs with ear muffs. You just wouldn't want the little tails on there. Maybe cut those off, okay? Or you can wear them alone. But the more that you can protect your eardrum, the higher the decibel level of protection you've got, and it's just going to be better. And the last one here would be the canal caps. These just go over and cover your ear canals. These are meant to be taken on or off real quick. So if I need to go in somewhere where it's noisy, I'm only going to be in there a minute or two, I could pop these on, but then take them off when I've got to go somewhere else. So they're quick on and off. Not something that's comfortable to wear for long periods of time. All right, so that's hearing protection. I'm going to move stuff out of the way here. So let's look at hard hats. So hard hats, protecting our noggins, okay? You've got the outer shell, which is a poly shell. You'll notice these aren't vented, and it is not safe to alter this. So drilling holes or cutting little slots to try to get the hot air out of there is going to compromise the shell. It's probably not going to work for you. The other integral part is, if I can turn right to my camera, is the suspension. So this is actually a 6-point suspension. They make 4-point as well. It's just a matter of comfort. But they'll all give the same level of protection. Where these attach, okay, there's the webbing that goes across to the other side. You want to make sure those are all intact and that they're not popping out or broken. The suspension itself will keep the shell above your head, so there's an air space in there. Hard hats don't just protect from things falling. More importantly, they're going to protect from bump hazards. So when you've got a hard hat on your head, if you bump into something, which happens a lot, especially on construction sites where things are low or you're in crawl spaces or working in equipment that's there during construction, they really protect from bump hazards. Poly shells will protect or have a certain level of protection from electrical hazards. You never want to wear an aluminum hard hat, which they do make, around electrical hazards. Also, the suspensions, they can come out and be turned around and put back in, which means you'd be wearing your hard hat backwards, and maybe that would look kind of cool. The problem is it's not designed to be worn in that direction. So never flip the suspension around. Never take it out, okay? If you wear something like a skull cap, which is a hard shell that you can put a regular baseball hat over, again, those will be anti-rated, but not for actual head protection. It's just kind of more for looks, a little bit of a bump hazard, but not like what a hard hat would do. Okay, so when you're inspecting these, make sure your suspension is all intact all the way around the hard hat. The shell's not compromised at all. It's good to know too that in some industries, 5 years is the max you can keep a hard hat. On the rim here, there'll be a date code. So if you work, say, outdoors a lot, many times in 5 years from the date it was made, you've got to throw the hard hat away and replace it because the sun can actually compromise the shell. So as an example, looking at a forestry helmet system, and this one's a little dusty. You've got your hearing protection. There's a flip down face screen here as well. Got to wear safety glasses with it. And then the hard hat is very similar to the one I just showed you. Got the suspension inside. But because in this industry you're working outside all the time, that's one of them every 5 years. They have to get rid of it, literally throw it away and buy a new one. So look at that if you're ever buying a hard hat. You don't want to buy an old one, even if it's at a good deal. So respiratory protection. You guys have already dealt with dust masks, most of you. I think we've had them out in the classroom, and because you're seeing a lot of them now. N95 masks, here it is on the side over here. N95 is just a dust mask, okay? It deals with dust particles. It does nothing for fumes, whether it's gasoline or paint or any other chemicals. This is only going to protect you from particles. It's important to know that the outside is the dirty side, the inside is the clean side. If you take it off your face and you put it down, you could end up compromising the clean air side, so that when you go and put the mask back on, you now breathe in what you were just trying to protect yourself from. So you've got to be sure that you always store these in a plastic bag or some sort of a closed container so that you don't end up inhaling something. That's the whole idea behind it, that you don't. Okay? These are disposable, and it's a good idea to rotate through them because they can plug up. Another form of respiratory protection would be something like this that has the charcoal filters. This is now going to start to protect from chemical hazards, but you need to know exactly what chemical you're trying to protect yourself from and get the right type canister, because these won't work for all types of chemicals. You've got to make sure that they're fit properly. They have to be sealed all the way around your face and the bridge of your nose. You know, if you've got facial hair and it's coming across the edge of your chin right here, you're going to get air filtration in by the hair. Firefighters, it's one big reason why they can't have a beard or goatee or anything. They've only got the handlebar mustaches because their face mask has to seal. And they actually test for that. It's called a fit test. So if you're dealing with anything more than dust particles, you want to have a fit test. All right, so we've done eyes, head, ears, and respiratory protection. Let's move down the body a little bit. I'm going to go right up to gloves. So there's a lot of different types of gloves out there. There's these style that are really just kind of protecting you from minor cuts, getting blisters and splinters, things like that. Different types of forms of nitrile gloves, latex, vinyl, Norfoil, butyl. There's many different types. It depends on the chemical exposure you're dealing with as to what you have to have for a glove. A lot of us would deal with gasoline. A latex glove cannot hold up to gasoline. Even nitrile, after a while, will start to kind of deteriorate and stretch out. So you got to make sure you have the right material to get the protection you need. And then you guys have seen the cut retardant gloves we've used. This one's in pretty rough shape. It's out of service. We don't use it anymore. But this would have Kevlar woven into it. They also make them to have like a steel mesh. These are not going to protect you from any sort of stabbing or puncture wounds, only for glancing. So let's say you're using a utility knife. Those of us that have done electrical already did this. You wear the glove on the hand that's not holding the knife. So if you slip and you cut across, it will protect you from that. But when it's got holes in it, that's when you need to get rid of PPE. Remember to always inspect your PPE before you use it. If it's compromised in any way, or if it has been deployed, it was used to protect you, you need to either inspect it by a qualified person or get rid of it. In most cases, you're just going to get rid of it. Okay, so our fingers, our phalanges on our feet, I'm not going to lift my foot up here, but those are our metatarsals. So our long bones in our feet are one of the things they're going to be protecting from. Objects that are falling are a very common one. If you work in industries where you're doing a lot of cutting, like say chainsaws, they're going to want cut retardant material in the glove to protect the top of your foot and your lower shin. And it could also be protecting from heat, from water, chemicals, puncture wounds coming up through, that type of idea. So you guys all know what leather boots are, you know what steel toe boots are. I've got a form here of a rubber boot which has a 1/4 inch plate steel toe in it. These are actually logging boots. And then Formed into the rubber as well on the leather upper, if I can get the felt out of here, is a padding, which is actually Kevlar. That's a ripstop or will stop a chainsaw. So these will also, in the sole, and most leather boots will have a steel shank. It's a steel plate in the bottom which gives you support, like climbing ladders or working on uneven ground, and it can also protect you from something coming up and stabbing through the bottom into your feet. In industries where there's going to be a lot of stuff falling, your employer doesn't necessarily have to supply you with steel toe boots. Many times that wouldn't be done, and they're not required to by the OSHA standards, because a boot is more of a personal item that you would wear most all the time. Let's say you worked at Hannaford and you work in the meat department and you've got to be wearing steel toe rubber boots because you're in and out of the cooler, washing floors down, things like that. They're probably going to pay for those boots because it is necessary for your job and you're not going to wear them back and forth to home. So that could be an example where they would, okay? So that pretty much wraps up what I wanted to explain about PPE. Again, this is a really quick hit. This is a mini lesson. We would go more in depth with it when we do our actual training later on at some point. So remember, Z87 for your safety glasses. I think hard hats is Z89. There are other ratings for every other form of PPE. First is engineering controls. Isolate a process, move it, get rid of it. Then would be work practice controls, keeping your work area clean, washing your hands, doing something yourself as a level of protection. And then we resort to PPE as your last line of defense. You can wear earplugs with earmuffs, or you can wear them individually, but it's important that you wear them correctly. Your employer, remember, does provide and pay for all of your PPE, most of your PPE. There are exceptions to the rule. If for some reason you forget, let's say your safety glasses, you forget them at home, you damaged them on purpose, or you just don't take care of them and they get all scratched up and you want a new pair, your employer doesn't necessarily have to pay to replace them. Okay? Many of them will, but how many times would they allow you to do that before they say, hey, come on, take care of your stuff, we're providing it for you? They could actually have you pay for a replacement. But if something came and struck the lens on your safety glasses, it's time to replace them because you shouldn't rely on them protecting you again. Your employer will and is obligated to replace them at that point. So if you guys have any questions on this or you're having a hard time finding an answer, go ahead and get in contact with me. I'd like to hear from you guys anyway, and I'm hoping that sometime later in the week we'll be able to set up a meeting. We'll do the Google Hangouts. Most of you guys said that would be the best platform, so that's what we'll do. Have a good rest of your weekend, although you're watching this on Monday, so weekend's gone by, but it's Sunday for me, and I'll talk with you guys later. I need to make a little correction here to the video. When I was talking about if you're working in an industry where there's a lot of objects that might be falling onto your feet, I made the statement that your employer doesn't have to provide steel-toe boots. I forgot to say they do need to provide some form of metatarsal protection. So that could be something that's a guard that straps onto the foot, something that could be taken on or off quickly. There is a type of a boot that has a steel plate kind of formed all the way up across the top of the foot, hence metatarsal protection. They could provide something like that because you're certainly not going to wear it home or out and about. But I didn't want you to think they don't have to protect you at all. They do. And ideally, something like that would be fixed with an engineering control first. Maybe you're working on a cut table, cutting steel, and the drops would be falling onto your feet. They could put a conveyor under it or something that would catch those drops so that you don't even have to wear metatarsal protection, any sort of foot protection. So just wanted to clarify that up for you. Thanks.